Hello, everybody, and welcome to At the Book, brought to you by bet.nola.com. It's our weekly look at the football betting weekend ahead, and I'm Zach Ewing alongside Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, set to bring you a preview of the football weekend, both in the college game and the NFL. We're excited to get started here and excited to be with you every Thursday afternoon here with At the Book. And one of the things we're going to do, guys, and I'll let you introduce yourselves in a minute, but we're going to make a lot of picks. We're going to talk about the lines, how they've moved. We're going to talk about what we like and don't like. And we're also going to talk to our friend James Carville, who is going to be at the center of our Cashin with Carville contest. And our viewers can participate in that every weekend and win some prizes. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, Jim Derry, he's our digital sports betting reporter. Jim, how are you?
Doing great. Ready to start picking. It's a great time of year. Football's starting. It's on TV every night now, and we're ready to go.
It is a beautiful night. It's the NFL opener. We had college opening games last weekend, and of course, all day Saturday and Sunday. If you're a football fan, you're happy just plop down in front of the TV. If the people in your house will let you do that, but that's what we all want to do. Devin Jackson is our sports betting producer. Devin, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Excited to pick these games. It was a full weekend of college football last weekend, and now we get NFL as well. So it'll be a lot of football on all weekend long, and can't wait to see it all.
Absolutely, and we'll get started as we will every week with our Cashin' In with Carville segment. And James Carville, as you know, a South Louisiana native, a political strategist, commentator. You see him on CNN all the time, other news networks. Very visible guy in the world of politics, but also loves his sports and his sports betting, and he loves his Louisiana teams. And so with that said, what we're having James do every week is pick 6 games for us, but there are going to be 8 games that are part of this contest. Now, the difference there is that the extra 2 games are going to be the LSU game every week and the Saints game every week. But James, as loyal of a Louisianan as you will find, will not pick against the home teams. He recognizes that sometimes they're not going to cover the spread, as we all do, but he doesn't want to pick against them. And so therefore, basically, if you want to pick against him, you could get a freebie against James, or you could lose more ground, or whatever the case is. But we're going to publish his picks, and then you can go online to bet.nola.com every week, and you can make picks. And if you beat Carville, at the end of every month, there'll be a prize. And then for the season long, the top 3 finishers, regardless of whether they beat Carville or not, the top 3 finishers are going to win bigger prizes. So be sure to log in every week, make your picks. We'll select the 8 games and post them on Wednesday, and then you'll have until Saturday to make your picks. So without further ado, here it is, our first segment of Cashin' In with Carville. Well, hey, everybody, I'm Zach Ewing, and this is the first episode of Cashin' In with Carville, brought to you by bet.nola.com. I introduce a man who needs no introduction here in South Louisiana, James Carville, for our first episode. James, how are you today?
Well, I'm good. I'm glad people are starting to get the lights back on back home. That's always a good feeling, and I'm glad that we didn't get wet. But this is a tough time for Louisiana, so I think it's time to have a little fun and get into a little sports betting here.
That's the idea. Hopefully we can actually do it by the end of the month, but we're going to start playing contests this week, and the NFL starts tonight with the Cowboys and the Bucks. So we're going to go, and for those who don't know, here's how it works. Each week we're going to ask James to pick 6 games against the spread, 3 college football, 3 NFL. Anyone who can beat James over the course of a month will win a prize, and then there are grand prizes at the end of the season for the top finishers as well. One note on that, and this, James, you can expound on this if you want to. You can't bear to pick against the home teams, and so your picks on LSU and the Saints will always be for the Tigers and the Saints.
Right? Yeah, that they don't count. They don't count.
That's right. If somebody wants to get ahead of you, they can pick against them, but that's their thing. It doesn't mean you think
I'm not going to do that. Right.
They won't necessarily cover every week, but
for recreational purposes only. Don't.
That's right. That's right. This is just for the contest.
Right.
So we'll jump right into the games this week, starting with college football. And our first one comes to us from Columbus, Ohio, where the Buckeyes are 14.5-point favorites over the Oregon Ducks. Ducks have a long way to come. Both teams won their opener last week. James, what do you think?
I'll take the points.
We'll take Oregon with the points on that one.
That's a lot. That's a lot of points, and Ohio State is good, but Oregon is good too.
Fair enough.
Maybe not as good as Ohio State, but there's a lot of good between 14.5 and a tie.
That hook will get you.
Right.
All right. Next up in the afternoon, the battle for the Hawkeye State. I guess I shouldn't say that because it's the Hawkeyes against the Cyclones. A big in-state battle, and Iowa State's at home. And even though Iowa had the impressive win against Indiana last week, it's Iowa State that's favored by 4.5.
Yeah, I'd take Iowa. And I like Iowa State. They were good last year. I think didn't they lose the opener this year? They didn't have a great opener, but that's 4.5 points, and it's a rivalry game, and I like the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, the Hawkeyes are certainly impressive last week. Iowa State did win last week, but it was, I think, 6 points against Northern Iowa. It was not very impressive. So we'll see if they bounce back. Yeah. And the last college game of the day, we go to the SEC, where the Arkansas Razorbacks are hosting Texas, and the line there is just under a touchdown. Texas minus 6.5.
Arkansas might be better than they've been, but they hadn't been very good. And Sarkisian, I think, is going to bring Texas back to. He's a good coach, all right. And I like the Horns here.
All right, so we're going with
the to-be SEC member over the established SEC.
We're going with 3. Yeah, the new SEC member.
Yeah, I'm eating a lot of chalk.
That's 3 road teams now, an underdog and 2 favorites.
3 road teams. I got 2 chalks. Yeah.
Yeah. But
well, you get the road stuff is factored in, into the point spread.
Absolutely. Yeah. So road teams cover just as much as home teams, right?
Yeah.
Now moving on to the NFL on Sunday morning. There's a lot of big NFL games this week.
Woo!
We picked out 3. But we'll start with the Bills hosting the Steelers, and Buffalo is minus 6.5. That's a statement you wouldn't have said 5 years ago. The Bills catching almost a touchdown against the Steelers.
I mean, Josh Allen, top-ranked quarterback. I'm going to take the Steelers, and I'm not. This is no nostalgia here. It's 6.5 points, and Steelers got a good coach, and they getting points, and it's. I know it's the new Buffalo Bills, but we'll go with the Steelers.
It's still the Buffalo Bills. Another road team, though. James Carville with a 4th road team and 4 picks. We'll see if that streak ends here with our Sunday night football game. The Bears are the road team going all the way out to L.A. The first Rams game with fans in the new SoFi Stadium. It's a big spread. Rams minus 7.5.
Eat them.
All right.
The Rams.
Taking the Rams big with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Maybe things change when Fields gets behind center.
If that defensive lineman they got might be the best player in the NFL,
Aaron Donald, he is a beast.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be in the same state with him.
We'll wrap up the picks with Monday Night Football. Again, first game with fans for the Las Vegas Raiders. They are hosting the Ravens, and it's a road favorite this time. The Ravens minus 4.5.
I'm going to take the home team in the points.
All right.
I mean, they're opening up. And the Ravens, Gruden good. They're pretty good. I like the Raiders here.
First team with fans at the new Allegiant Stadium. Should be an emotional night, and James Carville likes the Raiders. So just to recap, Oregon plus 14.5 at Ohio State is the pick. Iowa minus 4.5 at Iowa State. Texas minus 6.5 at Arkansas. The Pittsburgh Steelers plus 6.5 in Buffalo. The LA Rams minus 7.5 at home for the Bears, and the Raiders plus 4.5 against the Baltimore Ravens. So those are our Carville picks for week 1. You can log on to bet.NOLA.com and pick against James. See if you can beat him. See if you can win some prizes. In the meantime, I know you don't want to pick him, but what are your thoughts on LSU? I know you were at the Rose Bowl last week, a disappointing night, and then the Saints opening up as well.
My thoughts are we got to get better. I mean, it was like the 2020 season just started played into 2021. But what Coach Ogeron showed, he can adjust and make improvements. And, we had that awesome 2019. So, better beat if we don't beat McNeese in Central Michigan, but we're going to learn a lot against Mississippi State. But, we learned against UCLA that we got more learning to do here. And I don't think one game doesn't make a season, but it sure puts a caution light up,
Sure thing.
And so we'll see. But we got some terrific athletes, and I think coaches can get them focused in the right way. We can't let our people get beaten. UCLA got a lot of receivers behind us, and we couldn't move the ball. And hopefully, we knew the offensive line was a kind of question mark going into the season. It wasn't much of a question mark against UCLA. It just wasn't very good.
Yeah,
and
that's
hopefully through determination and coaching, and they'll get better. But let's see. But there's definitely a kind of a alarm in River City here.
As you said, at least they get 2 weeks to sort of get things right. McNeese and Central Michigan before they get into the SEC. What about the Saints?
What I don't know. You're practicing in Dallas, TCU. They fly to Jacksonville. They play Green Bay, which is, and they don't come home to the fourth game. Sean Payton is just such a good football coach. All right, he just really is a good football coach, and we're going to be, obviously the big question is that some people think James Winston could be, he's one of these guys got a lot of range. He could be a 2 on a scale of 10, or he could be a 9 on a scale of 10. I mean, he can definitely throw the pineapple.
I think he's going to be good. We'll see. I mean,
look, and again, I'm kind of, I'm kind of optimistic because we got a lot of good players. We got some really good coaches, and if our quarterback is what we hope and think he can be, it might be pretty good.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough. That's the best part. Any other betting tips or lines you like that we didn't mention this week?
I tell you, I like Nebraska a little bit.
Cornhuskers are
sort
of struggling.
13.5 in Lincoln, but Buffalo is not that good. And I'd throw in TCU -11 at home against Cal.
Okay.
And I like the Browns getting 6.5 with the Chiefs.
And that's in Kansas City, so that'll be that's the other big NFL game we didn't necessarily pick. So if you
those are kind of my Lanyap throw in with the hell, it might be, I've gone over. Just remember that.
we love Lanyap. We don't think you'll go over. It's James Carville. You know him from TV, but the man is a serious sports bettor, serious sports fan as well. And so we will be back every week with Cashin in with Carville. James, thank you very much for being with us.
If there's a vice, I like it.
All right.
I don't think sports betting is a vice. I think it's a virtue. But anyway.
Hey, it's very entertaining, and that's what we're here for. So we appreciate
it. Zackster. All right, man.
That's right. We'll talk to you next week.
You bet.
Okay. All right. We really appreciate James taking the time to be with us. That was recorded this morning, and so he is all about the opening weekend of the NFL as well. It opens up tonight with Bucks and Cowboys. And guys, this one's interesting because it opened up back in the summertime as Bucks -6.5, and I saw it just a few minutes ago. Jim, the line had moved all the way up to 9 for the Bucks.
Yeah, I wish I would have jumped on it back then. I would feel differently than I feel about it now. But Super Bowl champions usually win their home openers, especially with all the fanfare going on, but that's a lot of points. 9 points, too many points. I'm going to take the Cowboys if I have to take it, but I probably wouldn't put much on it, but I would take the Cowboys here, especially at 9 points.
Yeah, we'll talk about how much we're all willing to put on what later on in the show. But Devin, you have any thoughts on tonight's game? 9 points is a ton for an NFL game.
Yeah, it's a ton for an opening game as well. You know, those Thursday night games are usually pretty close contested games, and as much as the Bucks are bringing back, the Cowboys are bringing back their top quarterback. So I expect a lot of points tonight in a very very competitive game. Uh, but I'm excited to see it. But 9 points is way too much, especially for home a season opener. You know, we know those usually go down to the wire.
Yeah, it sure seems like if you could have, I'm with you, Jim. If you could have gotten it at 6.5, you like the Bucks to cover that. Now you're in that gray area of even if the Bucks control the game, you get a late touchdown, Dallas tries an onside kick or something. You really have no path to covering that 9 if a situation like that happens. And so you could really see this one go either way now that it's at 9. I'm in the stay away camp there.
Yeah,
we heard.
I don't know if I spent too much time watching Hard Knocks, so I feel more about Dallas. But I also think that Dak's, kind of lying in the weeds a little bit. I don't think he's as hurt as people think he is. He's going to come out and play well tonight.
Yeah, and you got to remember, I mean, he was lighting the NFL on fire the first 5. Now the defense couldn't stop anybody, and the total, by the way, is 51.5. If I like anything, I might go over on the total tonight because I could see a shootout where the Bucks get out to a lead and then Dallas is trying to fight back the entire second half. And if you've got any Cowboys receivers on your fantasy team, or if you've got Dak, I think you may be in for a big second half. Could see a game kind of like that. We heard James mention switching to the college game just for a minute, the struggles that LSU had. He was at the Rose Bowl last week. He got to see LSU lose to UCLA. The good news for the Tigers is they have a little bit of a get well portion of the schedule, if you will. They play McNeese State this week. McNeese, of course, one of the better FCS teams historically speaking in this area, but clearly punching outside their weight class this weekend, you would think, for LSU's home opener. And then next week it's Central Michigan. Central Michigan, a good team out of the MAC, but again, probably punching out of its weight class. What did you guys see that LSU just immediately needs to improve on and we need to see in these next 2 weeks, even against overmatched opponents, before they get back into the meat of their schedule?
Well, for me, the offensive line was not good to start, and the linebacking core on the other side was atrocious. They left the middle of the field wide open throughout the game, and UCLA seemed to pick them apart there whenever they wanted to or needed to, and they had no answer for it. And it looked a lot like the Mississippi State game last year. So you have to hope that they find a way to improve on that. But you can't wait till the 4th or 5th game of the season to do it this time. So we'll see if they can improve on that. It's going to be interesting to see how Coach O plays against his son, who's the quarterback at McNeese, Cody Ogeron, who I covered at Mandeville High School. Was a state tennis champion, as a matter of fact. Will he blitz? Will he try to hit Cody? It's going to be an interesting scenario to watch. I would take LSU here, but again, this is another one that I wouldn't put anything on, put much stock on. I think that LSU will bounce back and will be able to put salve on the wounds, but that's a lot of points given up for a team that looked as bad as they looked last week.
Yeah, the line is, which FCS lines come out later in the week. We haven't really been able to track any line movement, but it looks like it's going to open around 34.5 for LSU. So they have to win by 5 touchdowns. That is a lot. Of course, they probably want to make a statement after last week and say, hey, we're still LSU. We can still blow teams out. But I'm with you, Jim. I mean, offensive line maybe against McNeese and even Central Michigan to a certain extent, although Central Michigan gained almost 500 yards against Missouri last week in a loss. And so, I mean, they can move the ball too. And if you're leaving the middle of the field wide open, Cody Ogeron can take advantage of that. It doesn't matter if he's an FCS quarterback. He can hit an open receiver. Devin, do you have any thoughts here on what we need to see from the Tigers this week?
I think offensively speaking, more balance. They didn't have hardly any rushing yards against UCLA. They couldn't get any movement on the front, kind of on the front line or at the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. So I think the offensive and defensive line will be kind of key for LSU going forward to really make a run, in SEC. They have to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And some of the best LSU teams have had balance with the run and pass. Obviously, Joe Burrow's year, they passed the ball a lot, but they also had a really good running game. And they have a talented backfield, but they just couldn't get any movement or any, seams to open up for the running back. So I think that will be key as well, in addition to obviously playing better defensively, covering the middle of the field better. I think playing better on the offensive and defensive lines would be key too.
I mean, just a few years ago, seeing an SEC team go play a Pac-12 team and not be able to run the ball is like, it's like an alternate universe. So we'll talk more about that game. We'll talk more about the Saints as well. They open up on Sunday against the Packers. And that game, of course, is in Jacksonville. I saw some cool pictures from the Jaguars today showing that field with Saints painted in the end zones. And I couldn't quite see it, but I assume there's a Saints logo in midfield. It's going to be kind of a bizarre atmosphere, which, believe me, after we've been through the COVID year, we're used to bizarre atmospheres at sporting events, but this is just going to be another one. I personally kind of like the Saints here. I think you talk about teams that are lying in the weeds like Dak Prescott may be, that everybody's been talking bad about the Saints the entire offseason. People sort of assume the Aaron Rodgers situation is fixed. But Sean Payton, man, you give that guy time to prepare for a game, and it really feels like he could come up with something to score some points on the Packers, force them into pass mode. And then they fortified the secondary this week, the Saints have, with Bradley Roby from the Texans, and so that helps too. Can the Saints win a shootout? I mean, they're 4-point dogs. I think if you're giving me the 4, I at least like New Orleans to keep it close. Devin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they'll keep it close. I like their matchup of the defensive line against the Packers offensive line. I believe the Packers are starting 2 rookie offensive linemen, and you got some veterans on the Saints defensive line that can take advantage of that. So I think if they're able to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers and force him into quick throws and not letting him, outside the pocket, I think you could see a game where the Saints find some traction and able to keep it close throughout. The one thing about Sean Payton is that, while they've, had their fair share of struggles like in the playoffs and whatnot, they've won games that they're not supposed to win. They went 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater a couple years ago when Drew Brees went down. Last year, they won a couple games with Taysom Hill at quarterback. So they win games that you wouldn't think they could win, and with all the situations and everything going on, around the team, I think they're even more motivated than ever to make this a really tight game. So I would feel pretty good about the Saints covering this week. I think, the Packers are not going to be able to pull away from them, because the Saints just have that kind of mentality, especially going into this year, that, people are overlooking them. So I expect them to come out motivated to play.
It's interesting, Jim, because we've had conversations offline that you like the Saints as well, and I know you've written that just from a season-wide perspective. But I think I saw it's not one of your money picks, but I think I saw you like the Packers this week.
I'm actually going to throw a curveball at Ryan. I would take the Saints with the spread, but I wouldn't put anything on it, and I don't like the Saints to win this game. I think Green Bay is going to win the game. I actually think it's going to be a low-scoring game. But here's the thing. The Saints have not fared well in openers as of late. As well as Sean Payton does over bye weeks, it's not so much the same in opening weeks, and that's because they usually put the Saints up against a tough matchup in week 1. That's been that way. They like to have the Saints in a marquee matchup. This was supposed to be in the Dome, obviously, but this is the absolute worst team in the NFC that the Saints could open up with. They do not match up well with Green Bay. With the issues with Onyemata being gone and who knows what across the front line. But I'm more worried about the secondary and all the changes that have been made just this week. You got a new cornerback, Desmond Trufant. What's going to happen back there? So I just don't like the Saints matchups against Devontae Adams and the core of Green Bay receivers. And do they match up well against the tight end, Robert Tonyan? It's not a good matchup. I do think it will be close. I do think they will find a way to keep it semi-low scoring. I like the under. And I would take the Saints if I were forced to in the spread. But I think the Saints lose this game. But I do think that after this week, it gets easier for a little bit. It could be they could be 3 or 4-1 after this.
Yeah, it definitely gets easier. And you're right. I mean, they've had games – even looking ahead to like week 2s, they really struggled with the Browns a couple of years ago when the Browns were a very young team and not very not up in the standings or the playoff picture. They struggled with the Texans, the Raiders last year in week 2. I mean, you're right. Those first couple of weeks have been a struggle for them. I do kind of wonder, without the Drew Brees presence, if there's more of a sense of urgency to, like, hey, we've got to get rolling right now and show people that, we can do these sort of things. And really, I think there's probably also got to be a feeling that every game is going to count more. You're not going to go 12-4 this year or 13-4. These games are going to count big time right now if you're going to make a playoff run this year.
Well, a side note real quick, Zach, before we move on, but now with the Saints playing in Jacksonville, the only team in the NFL who will be playing 10 games away from their home this year. So will that take a toll later in the season? We'll see. But now they don't even have a home game until week 4, assuming that they're able to play that game against the Giants, I believe, in the Dome. And I think they will. If they can't play that one at home, then they don't play again at home until Halloween. So
Halloween. Yep.
The crazy early schedule. And even though the opponents are favorable, the venues maybe are not.
Yeah, that is true, and it's going to be a challenge for the Saints for sure, dealing with Hurricane Ida. And I know LSU had to deal with it, and Ogeron said after the game, like, I don't think that was a problem, but maybe it was. I mean, it's hard to say how it affects each individual guy. You've got guys who are worried about their houses, worried about their families, worried about what's happening back home, and they may say, yeah, I'm focused on the game, this is my job, but are you truly 100%? I mean, we've all experienced it in South Louisiana over the past few weeks. You can say you're focused, but there's still more going on than there usually is, and that you would like there to be. So that's a factor too.
Driving up
yeah, no doubt about it. Let's move on to our other game that we're going to play every week, and we're going to call it Big Bucks. And this is where each one of us, Devin, Jim, and myself, are going to start the season with $2,000. These are not real dollars. These are advocate bucks, if you will, bet.NOLA.com bucks. And we're going to take a portion of those each week and bet them on whatever we want to bet them on. It doesn't have to be the games for the Carville contest. It doesn't have to be straight up lines. It can be over-unders. It can be player props. It can be anything we want it to be. Maybe we'll start betting some baseball playoffs next month or some NBA. But right now we're going to start with $2,000 and see how we do, and see who can survive the football season with some money and maybe hopefully make some money. So Devin, I'm going to start with you. And one thing folks should know about Devin is that he spent a lot of time in the past several years in Pennsylvania in Big Ten country. And so that may color what he feels comfortable with to a certain extent. And so you'll see that in some of Devin's picks this week. Devin's number one pick is Ball State getting 22.5 points at Penn State. Penn State went on the road, beat Wisconsin last week, but Devin's going to put $44, so basically, 4 units, if you will, on the Nittany Lions to not cover a big spread against the Ball State Cardinals. Devin, what do you see in that one?
Well, I see an offense that's inconsistent for Penn State. I know how good their defense is, and I know how good they looked against Wisconsin, but over the last or under James Franklin, they struggled putting away smaller opponents. They went down to the wire against Appalachian State at home. They went down to the wire. I believe they had Kent State hang around for a while. So they struggle in kind of those season openers against schools they should blow out, so to speak. And Ball State has a really good experienced offense. They have a couple really explosive weapons offensively. I just like them being able to cover, even if they don't keep the game close in the first half. The second half, especially if Ball State keeps their starters out there, I think they can pull it within 3 touchdowns. So that's why I feel pretty confident about the pick.
All right. And anything else on your list there that you want to mention? I actually toyed with the idea of taking the Jets over the Panthers with 4 points, but you're taking the other side. You're taking the Panthers -4. That's for 3 units. You like Iowa for 3 units, the Browns, anything in particular that you're thinking on some of those picks?
I really like the Iowa pick. I think Iowa State is a little bit overrated in terms of their ranking. They struggled last week with a FCS opponent. Iowa looked really good against Indiana. I know this is a rivalry game, so those tend to be closer, but I think Iowa has the better team overall defensively, and they'll be able to shut Iowa State down. So I really like that pick and like Iowa in that game to outright win the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that Jim doesn't have it on his money picks, which we'll get to here in a minute, but I think we all liked Iowa in that game. That just and Jim Carville liked Iowa also. It's just a game where the line seems off, and I know, man, there are so many of these games where you see six so-called experts pick one side, and then Vegas is right the whole time, and the Cyclones should have been favored. So maybe we're all missing something. But just from looking at Week 1 performances, I don't totally understand that one. Let's bring Jim Derry's picks up now. Jim's got a few more NFL picks. I think you guys were a little more disciplined than I was. You'll see when I bring my picks up. I got all kinds of them. I guess I'm a volume better. But Jim Derry's number one pick of the week is the Ravens laying 4.5 at the first game in Vegas with fans for the Raiders. So that's interesting. It'll be an emotional night for the Raiders on Monday night. But you're going Baltimore, Jim.
You know, people say preseason doesn't matter. I don't really necessarily agree with that. And the Ravens over the past few years just win all their games in the preseason. And guess what? Then they go out and win in Week 1. And they often win big. And it's because Harbaugh thinks that preseason matters. And so I don't care what you say, Sean Payton, it does. And it gives you momentum, if anything else. And I think Lamar Jackson can't wait to get out there. He's going to have a fun time out there against this Raiders defense, in my opinion. You know, the Raiders have problems at running back. Josh Jacobs is questionable, as I looked yesterday. Jalen Richard's out. So who's gonna run the football for the Raiders? We don't know. But we know who's going to run the football for the Ravens. And I think the Ravens win this one on a Monday night in prime time, and Lamar Jackson's going to do his thing.
He's had a lot of primetime success. He seems to like playing in the big money games. So you may be onto something there. You also have a couple of $44 bets, or we'll call them 4-unit bets. Houston covering over Jacksonville, which is sort of the toilet bowl of the NFL Week 1. But hey, if you can make money on it, and then you also like the under in Browns Chiefs.
My golden rule, and I have a few of them, but my number one golden rule is never bet against a home dog in a division game. And why in the world is Jacksonville laying points to anybody? They shouldn't be laying points to if they were playing the Florida Gators on the road. They do not deserve. Trevor Lawrence, great. Whoop-de. You know, Urban Meyer, fantastic. He's going to find out what the NFL is all about, just like Nick Saban did a decade or so ago. I'm old, so I guess it's more like 15, 20 years ago now. But you know, they shouldn't be laying points. And then the other one that I really like, I like the under in the KC Cleveland game. It bumped up from 52 to 54.5. And we talk about spreads changing. Whenever spreads change like that, I love to take the other way because the public doesn't usually know what it's talking about. And about 7 or 8 times out of 10, you're going to win that bet. So, I mean, it's not because of anything that I've seen, but when spreads change that much, I'll wait till it gets as high as it's going to go, and I take the other way.
That's one of those where it's a very public game. It might be the game of the week in the NFL this week. Browns and Chiefs, a rematch from a great playoff game a year ago that was high scoring. And so maybe people just, oh, yeah, it's going to be high scoring again. But a lot of times you'll see early in the season, not always, but defenses tend to be just a little bit ahead of where the offenses are sometimes. Sure. And so that is a very high total for an NFL game, 54.5. How about your college picks there? A little less money put on them. You have Notre Dame and then like UAB over Georgia with 24.5 points in a low-scoring game.
Real quick, Zach, too, but if you bet all the unders in Week 1, you're going to win more than you lose. I promise you. I mean, don't even say, well, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. If you want to just take all the put 20 bucks. I'm
going to write that down. Let me write that down real quick.
I'm telling you right now, if you bet every single under this week,
some money.
You're going to win in Week 1. It's just like preseason. The first week of preseason, if you bet all the unders in preseason, you're going to win money. It happens every year. But as
might
far
be
as
worth driving to Mississippi, man, to make a bet here. I got that written down.
Will they let me bring the kids in there? I don't know. I'll have to ask. As far as college goes, look, do I think UAB is within 24.5 points of Georgia? No. But Georgia is due expend every ounce of energy they could possibly spend last week in beating Clemson, and they are due for a semi-letdown. I don't think they have any chance to lose this game, but I do think it's going to be a low-scoring kind of, 27-10 kind of game. And so, therefore, I like the UAB, and I like the under. So if you wanted to take a little bit and parlay the two, I didn't know how that worked, and I picked That's why I only put 11 on the under. But if I could, and I guess I can, I would parlay UAB in the under.
All right. If you want to add that later, we'll I'll play bookie and we'll talk about what that'll cost you.
I never understand. I mean, I know that it's close to 3-1, but I'm whatever they give me, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think it's 2.8 to 1 is what it comes out. But we'll get a parlay calculator in there and figure that out for you if you want to parlay. All right, I'm going to bring up my picks. I got 10 of them. I'm a little more confident in the college game than I am in the NFL. 6 of these are college picks. The game I'm the most confident in, we talked about it, is Iowa. I just, and again, with the caveat that maybe Iowa State is, and I'm not saying they're not good, and maybe the bookies know something we don't, and this line is correct. But with 4.5 points, you're telling me Iowa can't keep it close in Ames there? I just think Iowa's better than anybody is quite caught up to yet. I think they're a top 10 team in the country, and I think they can go on the road and at the very least keep this game within 4 points. I'd even consider sprinkling a little bit on the money line there and trying to get some good value. Elsewhere in the college game, I got Utah covering 7 against BYU. BYU lost everybody from last year. They didn't look very good last week. It's a rivalry game. Utah will be very motivated after losing to the Cougars last year. And so in the Holy Bowl, I got the Utes. And then my other three unit bet we talked about is the Saints over the Packers. I just think, again, they can keep it close. I think Sean Payton's one of those guys who's fueled by doubters, and he's got a lot of them in this offseason. And then just going down the rest of the list, Nebraska, I liked them a lot better when they were 13.5. It's moved up to 14. But I think they've just got to play better than they've showed so far. They're at home, facing a MAC opponent that's a sort of a mid-tier MAC opponent. I also have UAB on there. UAB's defense is good. I mean, look, they've only allowed more than 35 points like 3 times in 3 years or something. Maybe Georgia can get that high, but even if they do, that means UAB only needs 14 to cover the spread. So I like that pick. And then moving on down the line to some of the NFL picks, another game, the Chargers opened up as favorites on the road at Washington, which I didn't really understand. And the line has moved back down to a pick 'em. But guys, maybe I'm wrong. I think Washington ought to be favored at home to win that game straight up.
I think so,
I agree.
too.
Go ahead, Devin.
I was going to say, I think Washington's defense has only gotten better, since last year. They get in year 2, year 3 of a lot of these guys like Chase Young and whatnot. I think the Chargers are a little bit overhyped in terms of what people are expecting out of them, because they still have a first-year head coach, quarterback. Sometimes, after sensational rookie years, second-year quarterbacks have a bit of a drop-off, and they're in a new offensive system and whatnot. So I think kind of the hype around the Chargers needs to be cooled a little bit. They also play in a really tough division. So I think Washington should be favored at home with as good as their defense is.
Yeah,
I'm not betting
a pick 'em. Yeah.
I'm not betting against Fitzmagic. I mean, come on, he's ready to go and do something new again.
Remember what Fitzmagic did for the Bucs against the Saints? Speaking of Week 1 struggles, that was 3 years ago. I mean, he was electric in the Dome that day. I know Saints fans don't want to hear that, but that was fun to watch. And then just to recap the last couple of my picks, the 49ers 7.5 on the road is a ton of points. But look, the Lions, I don't even know that they're trying to win this year. Jared Goff against that 49ers defense, come on, easy money. And then same thing with the Falcons. I think the Falcons are still trying to win. I'm not convinced the Eagles don't just want to get a top 3 pick next year and try to get a quarterback. Maybe you see what Jalen Hurts can do, but that team is a mess right now. I'll take the Falcons at home. And then my upset special, just $10 on this one. I think the Titans have been overvalued for a couple of years. Jim, I know you disagree with that. I think the Cardinals can go in there and win that game straight up. So just a little sprinkle on that one for the money line.
Did you read my column this morning? Column?
No, did you pick the Cardinals?
I sure did.
I saw yesterday you picked the Titans to win the AFC South.
And I still think they will win the AFC South. I just think that, if you look at matchups and how they go, I think the Cardinals actually, you talk about preseason, I actually think it was good for them to have a week off. And I think it actually will benefit the Saints as well. I don't think moving all around will benefit them, but, that's one less week you have of potential injuries. But I think the Titans are going to have a little bit they're going to have a little bit of adjustment period. You know, Julio Jones and some other new faces there in Tennessee. So we'll have to see. But I just call it a gut feeling, call it whatever you want. I think I said in my column, call it I ate something bad for dinner last night. I don't know, but I just have a feeling that the Cardinals are going to pull out. Well, there are always 2 or 3 big upsets, and this is the kind of knockout pool buster game, you know, because there are going to be a lot of Titans picks this week, because I think a lot of people think like I do, and the Titans are going to be really good. And I think they'll win the division easily, because I think the Colts have a horrendously tough schedule in the way that it's set up. But I do like the Cardinals here.
Man, I honestly, I'd read about half your column and hadn't gotten to that one yet, so I'm surprised you didn't say that, because I knew you liked the Titans. But listen, Jim's picking every NFL game. I think he's, what are you, like 53% against the spread all time? I mean, which is a pretty healthy number.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, we'll see if we can kick it up a little bit this year and make you some real money. But it'll be interesting. There is always week 1 upsets in the NFL where nobody saw that coming, because these teams change so much. Free agency changes teams so much, and the draft can. That it's not like college where you can just assume, you know, even though in college, obviously the turnover is even higher. You can't assume the recruiting classes are going to be good for the New England Patriots every year. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. So it'll be real interesting. New England-Miami is another game. But we're going to wrap things up here for this week's episode of At the Book. Devin, final thoughts from you on the first weekend coming in the NFL?
Yeah, I'm just excited to see, how teams look. You know, some teams, really didn't even play their starters in preseason. So this is going to be the first time we see a lot of these, a lot of these players. Like, I'm excited to see what the Cardinals do this year. I think, the preseason isn't really an indication of how they're going to look in the regular season. So I'm very intrigued on that game. I'm also intrigued for the Patriots and Dolphins game. I think that will be kind of a litmus test for both teams to see if one of them can sneak in the playoffs as a wild card, because I do think Buffalo will end up winning the division again. But I think between those two teams, it might come down to their second matchup, whether or not either team gets in that second or that first or second or third wild card spot this year.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of all the 17 games, 7 teams make it from each conference. It's just a little bit different. But Jim, we're ready to go. You had a fantasy auction last night. So tell me, first of all, the best value that you got in your fantasy auction last night.
Well, my best value was keepers. We do an auction league. It's $250 of 250 fake dollars, advocate dollars, if you will. And you have 18 players on your team. I was able to keep Derrick Henry for 30 and Aaron Jones for 10. So for $40 out of 250, I start off with Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones, and then I spent a bunch of money on Devontae Adams. I also have Russell Wilson for 12. So I really like my team. We were supposed to draft on Monday night, but a lot of our guys had issues with power and internet, and so we kind of did our first ever virtual draft. It was our 31st draft of the Finks Football League, and I miss being with those idiots. Some of those guys I don't get to see a lot, so it's a fun time to get together every year. But so we did it virtually, and it came out pretty well, I thought. But this is one of my favorite weeks of the year. This, along with the divisional round of the NFL playoffs and the first weekend of March Madness and opening weekend of baseball, my 4 favorite weekends of the year. So I don't think you can go wrong as long as you have a partner who's willing to let you sit in front of the tube for about 48 hours straight.
Yeah, that's right. And believe me, I love what you said there, because what sports is all about, and being a sports fan, and frankly, even playing fantasy sports or betting on sports, yes, it's great to win some money, but it's about talking about it, and it's about being with your idiot friends and having fun. And so we hope you spend some time with the 3 of us idiots throughout the season. Every Thursday we'll be at the book, and then we have 2 more shows that are debuting next week. Odds and Ends on Monday afternoon. That's a recap of the weekend, and we'll talk a lot of Monday Night Football. And then Wednesday is the fantasy roundup, and so we'll be talking a lot of fantasy football pickups to make daily fantasy values, things like that. Sports betting is coming to Louisiana. I've been told hopefully by the end of the month you can actually go into a casino and place a bet, and then you can do it on your phone or on your computer as early as next month, sometime in October. So we're all crossing our fingers that happens as quickly as possible. In the meantime, yeah, that's right. In the meantime, keep bet.NOLA.com on your browser and subscribe to our newsletter, and just keep rolling with us all season long. and sooner or later we'll all be able to make these bets and play these games for real. So for Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing. This has been At the Book.